Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Pan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening: the ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to hold after the 12-day war. President Trump dismisses a Pentagon report which claimed the U.S. strikes failed to destroy nuclear sites, calling it a perfect mission. The NATO summit kicks off in Netherlands. European nations are set to endorse increasing their defense budget to 5% of GDP. 26 people killed in a fresh wave of Russian attacks on Ukraine ahead of the summit. Strong global cues lift Dalal-Street. The Sensex and the Nifty end at their highest closing levels in 2025 so far. IT and FMCG stocks lead the rally.
3, 2, 1. Ignition and lift off.
After multiple delays, the Axiom-4 space mission lifts off. Captain Shubhanshu Shukla becomes the first Indian in space after 41 years, accompanied by astronauts from US, Hungary and Poland. They're scheduled to dock at the International Space Station by afternoon tomorrow. Mukesh Ambani unveils the conglomerate's vision on artificial intelligence in an interview to McKinsey. Says Reliance will not go chasing after GPUs and focus on using the existing AI infrastructure to create real-world solutions in healthcare, education, agriculture and energy. Mukesh Ambani says Jio was the biggest risk he took, adding that digitizing India would have been the biggest philanthropic effort for Reliance, even if Jio had failed to take off. NSE offers nearly 1,400 crore rupees to market regulator SEBI to settle the co-location case. Sources say NSE could get the green light for its IPO if the settlement offer is accepted. At least 6 suitors submit bids for bankrupt JP Associates. Sources say Adani, Vedanta and Dalmia Bharat Group are among the bidders. Torrent Power could soon enter power distribution services in Maharashtra. The state's electricity regulatory authority expresses satisfaction to grant approval in Mumbai, Pune and Nagpur. Adani and Tata are currently the only private power distributors in Mumbai. TataMotors will run out of rare earth magnets in a few months, but rules out any production cuts just yet. MD Shailesh Chandra expects sub 5% growth in the passenger vehicle sales this year, citing a slowdown in urban areas. Well, let's start with the market action. Positive global cues helped the Dalal-Street and the Sensex and the Nifty ending at their highest closing levels in 2025 so far. The Sensex gained 700 points, the Nifty up by about 200 points today, almost 1% higher for both the indices. The mid-cap index continues to gain ground, 260 points higher there, and the Nifty Bank closing 160 points higher this afternoon. Prashant is standing by to wrap up the market action for us. A strong close today, Prashant.
A much better session today. Yesterday, by the way, was also good, but gains petered out and we ended about 1/3% higher. Arguably, I guess, there was some worry whether overnight there would be violation of that ceasefire, which was announced by President Trump, and missiles will start to fly again. None of that happened, and the market here sort of really picked up from where it left off yesterday and built on gains through the course of the session. So the Nifty ending about almost 200 points higher. Bank Nifty was the underperformer. Mid and small caps, actually the small cap index was the one on your screen, which with 1.5% gains really stood out. And I'll highlight the stocks which moved because there's a long list of volume-led gains today. Sectorally, IT was the winner, just as a group, and defense continues to sort of see a little bit of profit booking. I'll start with the Nifty stocks. Titan was up 3% today. Mahindra & Mahindra 2%. Infosys, Grasim and JSW Steel were the 1.5% plus gainers. BEL, again, defense name, as I pointed out earlier, 3%. That was the, only, I guess, meaningful loser in that sense that you had as far as large caps are concerned. Now we get straight to the broader markets. The biggest volume-led gainer was 63 Moons with a 4.5% gain, but humongous volumes. You had so much else. MCX, 5.5% gain. Samman Capital was up 15%. Kirloskar Brothers, 17% gain. There was Balaji Amines and Alkyl Amines, which were up very, very sharply. India Mart on the back of a brokerage call, 7% gains. RK Forgings up 5%. Bellrise. There was Fino Payment Bank. EID Parry, Parag Milk. And I could go on with many of these names, but it basically, I think these are the 10 or 12 of the top volume-led gains that we had in terms of the session today. So really all about mid and small caps today. On the downside, I mean, I already highlighted BEL from the large cap space, but there were others like Garden Reach, Mazgaon, Data Patterns, Apollo, Paris Defense, which Idea Forge, these all saw some profit booking showing up on that defense index, which was down. Dixon was down 2.5%. There have been some selling from promoters. Angel One was down 3.5%. Chennai Petro, big gains earlier this week, 2.5% lower. And something like a Nelco, Dam Capital, etc., were also down a little bit. But all in all, unambiguously, a very, very positive session today after yesterday's slight hesitation. Back to you.
All right, Prashant, many thanks. Well, from equities to commodities, now crude oil prices edging higher today after declining over 10% over the last 2 days. This after investors assess the ceasefire between Iran and Israel. Growing expectations of an interest rate cut by the U.S. Federal Reserve also supported prices. So that's the story there as far as crude goes. The big global story that is moving markets worldwide, the ceasefire between Israel and Iran announced by U.S. President Donald Trump appears to be holding for now. Both countries are publicly committed to the truce, and both Tehran and Tel Aviv claimed victory after that 12-day war. President Trump also doubled down his claim that recent U.S. strikes had completely destroyed 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. This comes after an initial intelligence assessment by the Pentagon, which revealed that the sites had not been destroyed and Iran's nuclear program has been set back by only a few months. Speaking on the sidelines of the NATO summit in The Hague, Trump also described the ceasefire as progressing very well and equated the U.S. strikes in Iran to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, calling it essential to end the war.
We're actually getting along with them very well right now. But had we not succeeded with that hit ended the war. That hit ended the war. I don't want to use an example of Hiroshima. I don't want to use an example of Nagasaki, but that was essentially the same thing. That ended that war. This ended that with the war. If we didn't take that out, they'd be fighting right now. They fought like hell, and then they said, let's stop. And they're going to build themselves. And I really see it as sticking. I mean, we may do papers on it, Marco. Maybe we're going to do papers. I don't even know if you need them. They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like 2 kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes, then it's easy to stop them.
A preliminary U.S. intelligence assessment determined that U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities over the weekend only set its nuclear program back by a matter of months. That's according to 3 sources with knowledge of the matter. The classified assessment is at odds with the statements of President Donald Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who both said that the strikes had, quote, obliterated Iran's nuclear ambitions. Trump has said the attacks were necessary to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. Iran denies it is seeking such a weapon and says its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes. One source said the initial assessment was not universally accepted and had generated significant disagreement. A U.S. official speaking on condition of anonymity said the U.S. did not know the extent of the damage yet. Still, the preliminary assessment indicated the strikes may not have been nearly as successful as the Trump administration has claimed. One of the sources said Iran's enriched uranium stocks had not been eliminated, and that the country's nuclear program may have been set back by only a month or 2.
Well, that is the latest there between Israel and Iran. Now, Israeli forces have killed at least 31 Palestinians in fresh strikes on Gaza. This includes 10 people who were killed while waiting for food at an aid distribution point. This comes as health authorities said the number of Palestinians killed in the war has now crossed 56,000. The Israeli army has also confirmed that at least 7 Israeli soldiers were killed in combat in Gaza. Meanwhile, 26 civilians have been killed in a fresh wave of Russian attacks across Ukraine. Several were injured in the ballistic missile attacks on multiple civilian sites. This comes as Ukrainian President Zelensky sought guarantees at a NATO summit of further Western help to repel Moscow's invasion. European and North American leaders have gathered at The Hague in Netherlands for the NATO summit. The alliance members are set to endorse increasing their defense budget to 5% of GDP. President Trump praised the defense spending plan, speaking to reporters on the sidelines of the summit. The president also confirmed his commitment to the alliance's core collective defense promise, which he'd initially undermined.
We're with them all the way. I mean, if you take a look at the numbers, we're with them. And they have very big things to announce today. I don't know if you've taken the vote or you're going to take the vote, but I've been asking them to go up to 5% for a number of years, and they're going up to 5%. That's a big, from 2%. And a lot of people didn't even pay the 2%. So I think it's going to be very big news. NATO is going to become very strong with us.
There is absolute conviction with my colleagues at the table that given the threat from the Russians, given the international security situation, there is no alternative. We've got to do this. Would you really think that the 7 or 8 countries not at 2% at the beginning of this year would have reached the 2% if Trump would not have been elected president of the United States? Do you really think that, of course, there is a threat from the Russians, China, etc., but that it would be doable to reach this commitment of 5% today? And I'm hopeful and cautiously optimistic we will get there.
While the NATO summit underway in The Hague, the big corporate story this evening, Reliance Chairman Mukesh Ambani laid out the group's vision on artificial intelligence and more. Speaking to McKinsey, Ambani revealed that Reliance will not go chasing GPUs and will instead focus on creating real-world solutions. He said the conglomerate has created its own purpose in AI. I quote, "Our big purpose is to solve the complex problems before society and create wealth for the nation and the people. For this, we need not go into the high-risk GPU game. Let's do everything downstream." End of quote. Ambani also revealed that Jio was the biggest risk he had taken so far. He said, and I quote, "At the time, it was our own money that we were investing and I was the majority shareholder. Our worst-case scenario was that it might not work out financially because some analysts thought India wasn't ready for the most advanced digital technology. But I told my board, in the worst case, we will not earn much return. That's okay because it's our own money. But then as Reliance, this will be the best philanthropy that we will have ever done in India because we would have digitized India and thereby completely transformed India." End of quote. Speaking about the future, Ambani said he remains confident that Reliance will continue to serve India and humanity well into the future, but he also had a word of caution, saying the big challenge would be the confidence of the next generation to succeed in the new landscape. Now, the NSE has submitted settlement applications to market regulator SEBI to resolve the co-location and dark fiber matter case. Sources have told CNBC TV18 that the exchange has offered a record 1,388 crore rupees to settle the case. Take a look.
This is the largest settlement offer put forward to SEBI by any company in the history of Indian capital markets. What we've been given to understand from our sources is that the National Stock Exchange has filed for a settlement application. This is in the co-location matter with market regulator SEBI. The amount or the size of this settlement application is about 1388 crore rupees. As far as this settlement application is concerned, what sources tell us is that it was filed on Friday last week and it is on the desk of market regulator for its consideration. Assuming a situation where the settlement offer, which is in the co-location matter, gets accepted by market regulator SEBI, then in that case, market regulator SEBI's next move would be to give that all-important no objection certificate to NSE, which will enable the exchange to file for the DRHP of its much-awaited IPO. Also, simultaneously, in a situation where the settlement offer gets accepted, SEBI will have to move Supreme Court to withdraw its case against the National Stock Exchange as well. That will happen simultaneously, and once these two things are done, then, of course, it will be a normal IPO process to go about as far as NSE itself is concerned. We've written to the National Stock Exchange on this particular story, but they've declined to comment.
Yash, many thanks. At least 6 bidders have submitted resolution plans to acquire the bankrupt Jaiprakash Associates. The bidders include major names like Adani Enterprises and the Vedanta Group. Ritu's here with more. Ritu, what are you picking up?
That's right. Some of India's top corporate houses have lined up to bid for Jaiprakash Associates. And out of the 25 entities that had initially shown an interest, our sources indicate at least 6 have come forward with binding offers, with a deadline ending on Tuesday. Now, the bidders include heavyweights like the Adani Group, Vedanta, Dalmia Bharat, Jindal Power from the Naveen Jindal Group. Also, listed infrastructure player PNC Infratech is in the fray, as is JP Infratech, which is another JP Group company that is now controlled by Suraksha Realty after going through the IBC process itself. Now, JP Infratech, in fact, in a statement to us, confirmed the bid, but they did not share any further details. Now, while the financial terms of the offers are not yet known, some of the bankers we've been speaking to tell us that 12,000 crore rupee offer that was made earlier by the National Asset Reconstruction Company to acquire JP's stressed loans from banks could be used as a benchmark by the bidders. Some even expect the offers to be lower still with the ongoing litigation around the company's land in Noida. But that said, this is a major milestone in what has been a protracted insolvency process, because remember, JP Associates was first flagged by RBI in its second list of large defaulters back in 2017 and only admitted to the insolvency court last year. It is the flagship company of the JP Group with interests across real estate, hospitality, cement, engineering and construction, and is now facing claims of more than 57,000 crore rupees. So all eyes are now on how the bidding process will unfold, especially with these high-profile names in the mix.
All right, Ritu, many thanks. Now, Torrent Power could soon enter power distribution services in Maharashtra. The state's electricity board has expressed satisfaction to grant approval in Mumbai, Pune and Nagpur. Remember, Adani and Tata Power are currently the only private power distributors in Mumbai. Vivek joins us now with the details. A third private player in Mumbai. Vivek.
That's right. A very interesting, important development as far as the power sector is concerned, and some good news likely as far as consumers are concerned of power companies as well as of supply of electricity itself. So what's actually transpired in the last couple of days is that MERC, which is the Maharashtra Electricity Regulatory Commission, has gone ahead and expressed satisfaction for granting approval to a company called Torrent Power. This is for parallel DISCOM services in 3 key areas. Which are these 3 key areas? Pune, Nagpur as well as Mumbai metropolitan region. What this essentially means is, in case this particular proposal does go through and in case there is no opposition, you would see Torrent Power also as a supplier of electricity in the MMR region along with Pune as well as the third region, which is Nagpur. Now, what has actually transpired is that MERC had received a proposal from Torrent in December 2022. Torrent Power had claimed a capex of close to 15,000 crore for setting up DISCOM services in Maharashtra. After quite a long period, MERC now doesn't have an issue. However, remember, on July 22nd, there will be a final public hearing or a final petition that will be held, which essentially will decide whether or not Torrent Power can go ahead and set up DISCOM services in Maharashtra. What is the implication of this significant development? First, let's have a look at the implication as far as the power space and power companies are concerned. Remember, parallel license distribution basically implies that companies can now look forward to a diversified as well as a steady income stream. Along with that, remember, whenever a privatization of DISCOMs has happened, especially if you look at Odisha, Tata Power has seen a steep reduction as far as AT&C losses. So it improves, number one, the network itself, and number two, also improves earnings visibility as far as power companies are concerned. What does it mean for the consumer? Well, it's very simple. For the consumer, you get another option as far as choosing your service provider is concerned, and at most times, higher competition could also mean you get a slightly lower electricity bill in the future.
All right, Vivek, many thanks for joining us. We will head to a break, but up next, after multiple delays, the Axiom-4 space mission lifts off. Captain Shubhanshu Shukla becomes the first Indian in space after 41 years. That and more when we return. The Axiom-4 space mission carrying Indian astronaut and group captain Shubhanshu Shukla is on its way to the International Space Station. The mission took off from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida's Cape Canaveral. The mission had faced multiple delays because of weather and technical issues. In his first message from the mission, Shukla said, and I quote, "This is not the start of my journey, but the start of India's human space program," end of quote. Captain Shukla becomes the first Indian in space since Rakesh Sharma in 1984. He'll also become the first Indian to visit the International Space Station. Group Captain Shukla is being accompanied by astronauts from US, Hungary and Poland. They will spend 2 weeks at the International Space Station, which is a permanent research facility orbiting the Earth at an altitude of 400 kilometers. Group Captain Shukla's parents watched liftoff from their residence in Lucknow. From President Murmu to Prime Minister Modi, political leaders cutting across party lines extended their wishes to the mission.
3, 2, 1, ignition, and lift off.
मेरे कंधे पे मेरे साथ मेरा तिरंगा है जो मुझे बता रहा है कि नहीं हूँ, मैं आप सबके साथ हूँ। आइए हम सब मिलकर भारत की ह्यूमन स्पेस प्रोग्राम की जर्नी की शुरुआत करें। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद, जय भारत।
बहुत बड़ा गर्व है हमारे लिए आज का दिन, जो इतिहास में याद रखा जाएगा। बात अभी हुई थी, अभी सुबह हुई थी, निकलने के पहले बात किया था हम लोगों से कि मैं निकल रहा हूँ मम्मा। बात करके गए हैं आज।
बात करके गए हैं।
हाँ, आशीर्वाद लेके गए हैं, दही पेड़ा खिलाया, वो खा के गए हैं दूर से।
To the crew, Godspeed, and spend as much time as possible to look out of the window.
Well, the Axiom4 spacecraft will take 28 hours to reach the International Space Station. It's expected to dock tomorrow afternoon India time. The mission is being carried out using a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. It's completed 16 missions so far, carrying astronauts to space. It has a perfect safety record. Axiom4 is a big step towards India's Gaganyaan mission, which aims to send a crewed mission to space. ISRO is coordinating with NASA, and Captain Shukla will conduct crucial research to facilitate the Gaganyaan mission. So what exactly will Group Captain Shukla do in space? Will he study the cognitive effects of screen use, microbial adaptation, muscle atrophy, and crop resilience in microgravity, among other things? Well, we will keep you posted right here on CNBC TV 18. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue after this very short break. Stay tuned. We're back in a moment.